So, Wynford, is it okay if I record this conversation so I remember?
Yeah.
So what I might do with it is write it up later in a book or in a I don't know, some kind of blog. So, where to start? I woke up this morning with lots of questions that I wanted to ask you on top of everything else that's in here. So, as you know, I've bought the Zing Hallowell program, and I did the assessment yesterday. I spent a long time procrastinating, thinking I'm going to do it wrong and worrying about it.
Yeah.
I got someone to body double with me. I did it, and I did do something wrong. So I was following the instructions, and one of them said, stand on your one leg like this and and count how long, and on the other one. And then after that, it was close your eyes and do it.
Yeah.
Now, the first one I did after that, I didn't close my eyes. I didn't read the bit that said close your eyes.
Okay.
So that one I did with my eyes open again. And then the next one, I realised it said close your eyes. So I closed my eyes and I lasted for about 3 seconds. Now, has that messed up the thing?
No, all that's for is to give you a starting point in the programme so we determine where you get stimulated and to what extent you get stimulated. If something wasn't quite right in the initial test, the first time you get an exercise pertaining to that, it will correct it and adjust it for the future. So it adapts daily, so don't worry about that.
Okay, because I've been quite worried. Okay, thank you. Now, as I said to you before, I'm really proud to be ADHD. I love my ADHD. I know it gives me challenges, but I love the things that it allows me to do. Now I understand about ADHD. My question is, will I still have the ability to link ideas and see the bigger picture in a flash, including unusual solutions that I do now? Will I still have those abilities after doing the Zing program?
At least as much, yes.
Okay.
Creativity is linked to curiosity, it's linked to a degree to impulsivity. It means your brain has got no inhibitions. You will have a look anywhere. It doesn't matter what the preconceived ideas are that normally constrains other people. That doesn't go away. So the power of your brain, your creative brain, is going to be there. The difference will be you'll have more working memory capacity to deal with those things and can plan how you're going to handle it, what you're going to do with it. Up till now, when you have brilliant ideas, sometimes they're lost if another even more exciting idea comes along 10 minutes later, so you lose it. The more working memory capacity you have, the more of those brilliant ideas you can retain. So this won't make you more creative, but it will give you more mental capacity to do something with your brilliant ideas.
Because part of me was wondering if the whole struggle that I do have in my brain daily, if that struggle is what leads me to look elsewhere to find ideas. Like, oh, I'm finding this particular thing difficult, so then my mind goes somewhere else. And then maybe I join that random thing with what I'm doing now to create that idea. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see. I wanted to record myself asking this question so that when I've completed the programme, I will then be able to answer my own question and see if it has changed.
Yeah.
But I was just curious.
What you'll feel is much calmer in the process.
I need calm.
Well, the more mental capacity you have, the calmer you will be.
Yeah.
So it is not going to increase or reduce your creativity.
Right.
It's simply going to give you more capacity to do something with those creative ideas. And the more capacity you've got, the calmer you'll be able to handle them.
Amazing. Okay, another one. Another thing I love about my ADHD is the fact that when I speak to other people that are ADHD, I have such a blast because I love the way that their minds work. And I realised before I even went for my assessment, I realised my favourite clients and students are ADHD.
Of course.
And I love that. Now, after doing your programme, will it remove, it sounds like a silly question now, but will it remove my connection with people who are ADHD if I don't share some of the same traits?
What you like is a huge amount of creativity in the conversation process. So
Yeah.
you're completely comfortable if the conversation jumps around.
I love it.
you can keep up with it because that stimulates you.
Yeah.
The only difference will be is you'll be able to retain more of the mad ideas you've shared and listened to.
Okay. I love it. I love it. Thank you.
No, you're still going to love ADHD, folk.
I can't see that changing, but I just didn't know, maybe if my brain isn't as compatible with theirs, if you see what I mean.
You discipline yourself to be patient and tolerant.
Yes.
But it's hard work.
It is.
Because your brain has finished their sentence before they're halfway through, and so on.
I'll cut that bit out.
Where you know where their mind is going.
Yes, yes.
Well, you might as well admit it, because it's a...
Yeah.
You're probably masking.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard.
It's not going to take away... It's not going to take away you finishing off their sentences and being... and all of those things, but it will give you more mental capacity so you don't feel the irritation. You won't feel the need to jump in and finish off their sentence so much.
Good. Okay, great. I imagine from speaking to you and listening to all of your podcasts and stuff, that I won't be overwhelmed with all the ideas that I get.
Well, what is overwhelm? Overwhelm is when you don't have the mental capacity to store and process everything that's happening.
Yeah.
At the moment, your mental capacity is very limited because some of your key skills are having to be processed in your prefrontal cortex.
Yeah.
And when your skills are being processed there, it's filling it up with stuff that shouldn't be there.
Yeah, yeah.
When you run out of space here, that is overwhelm. This is the only bit of memory we can actually access, the only bit of our brain we can actually access. So you can't look elsewhere. When this is full, it's full.
Yeah.
And at the moment, it's nearly full, just helping out with what they call conscious compensation. In other words, if you've got an incompletely developed key skill, conscious compensation is needed, which fills up your prefrontal cortex. When you run out of space there, you are in overwhelm. You have no capacity to control your emotions. You have no capacity to be superbly organised.
Okay. So I had a thought then, and then it disappeared.
Of course.
So after the Zing programme, will I be able to retain my thoughts more?
You'll have much more space, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not just that it fills this space up. So if, for instance, eye tracking isn't perfect, then your prefrontal cortex gets filled up, helping out with eye tracking. This is 100,000 times slower than the cortex. So it helps out with the eye tracking, but it's nothing like as good. It's so slow. When it's, for instance, when you're learning to ride a bike, you know what to do. You've watched lots of people. They've told you what to do. You know you've got to balance and pedal and lean over a bit and turn. But your processing is so slow because it's all happening in your prefrontal cortex. 100,000 times slower than the cortex. You can't ride a bike until your cerebellum has listened to what you're trying to do with balancing and pedaling and turned it into a hardwired process that happens automatically without you having to think about it up here in your cortex. So when you've done that, the processing speed goes up and you can ride a bike. You can't until that has happened. So you've got to be very aware of the enormous difference between the speed of processing in the prefrontal cortex versus up in the cortex when a skill is fully developed. But there's something else as well. The cortex is almost infinite in both speed and capacity. So if you've got automatic things happening, you know, when now we're adults, we can walk and do all sorts of things, drive a car and be talking. Huge number of processes going on because there's infinite capacity up here in the cortex. And it's all good. You drive very safely because it's all automatic and up in the cortex. The thinking brain, the best you can get in is about 7 different processes to be running at any time.
Okay.
So if some of that 7 is being taken up with visual processing, auditory processing, spatial awareness, whatever it is, then it's not long before it's full and you are in overload. So here, it's very slow, very limited capacity, that's the prefrontal cortex. Here up in the cortex, almost unlimited speed and almost unlimited capacity. 100,000 times faster. Some neuroscientists are arguing that it's even more than that. But you can, I can't cope with 100,000 anyway. It's just infinitely fast by comparison. So that's why having anything happening in your prefrontal cortex that needn't be there is incredibly limiting. It's why kids with neurodiversity are nearly always frustrated. They go into overload. They can't control their emotions. They can't control their anger or whatever it is.
I was very late riding a bike. I remember being very embarrassed. So it does make a lot of sense to me. So
we get kids riding a bike within a few weeks if they're slow.
So
and speaking. Verbal fluency is all cerebellum.
Ah, that's interesting.
Yeah, verbal fluency, picky eating. It's all to do with cerebellum. It's all to do with the automaticity. Because one of the roles of the cerebellum is to be the modulator of all of our sensory inputs. So, for instance, something you'll have seen with children, I'm quite sure, some children don't have any understanding of about how loud they should speak.
Yes.
It's because the adjustments in the cerebellum of sound that your own voice coming back in hasn't been tuned. So they're inappropriate. Sometimes children have to have the labels cut out from their clothes.
Yeah, that helps me a lot.
Because the sensory information coming from the label is far stronger than it ought to be, and the cerebellum hasn't done its job of modulating it.
Yeah.
So when you transform the cerebellum and make it work properly, they don't need the labels cutting out. Picky eaters the same. Often they don't like the texture of whatever it is they don't like the texture of, because the cerebellum hasn't been able to fine-tune those textures so it feels natural and normal. So the role of the cerebellum is to make us a natural at things.
Is that the same with the sounds? Because my daughter really suffers with loud noises.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
The modulation hasn't happened.
Yeah.
Or it can happen with other sounds where you're incredibly good at processing music. If you're a natural at listening to music and then playing it on a piano, it's because the cerebellum has made you a natural by creating hardwired processes that turn the sounds into what you can actually see the keys and play the keys and feel the keys. So being a natural is what the cerebellum does when it's doing its job properly, at whatever it is. Did that make some sense?
Yes, and I will enjoy listening back to that. My mind did wander off a little bit towards the end.
I saw that.
Because I'm thinking about my next question already, racing ahead. So, Wynford, as you know, I am highly driven to change our environment so that people with dyslexia, ADHD and other thinking styles can just be who they are without all of this rubbish that they have to deal with in their heads. So their cerebellum is working properly and stuff like that. I know that things like this work because it's happened to me before. Your program is epic. So I am 100% committed to sharing this with everybody that I come in contact with. And I've got all sorts of complicated plans and simple plans to get the people that need to know about it to know about it. I am worried, however, that if I do your program, this might sound weird. Well, I am going to do your program. I'm going to start it tomorrow. But I'm worried that doing your program will somehow dampen the drive that I've got, because I love how I feel. I know what I'm going to do. And I feel like I won't settle until everybody knows about this. But I'm worried if I do your program and then all of a sudden my brain is chilled out, my cerebellum's good. And does that mean that I'm not going to have what I've got now?
I've only ever seen the opposite happen.
Oh my goodness, how am I going to cope?
Well, because you've got more mental capacity to cope. What I see happen is folk can get passionate about this because they have hope. When that hope becomes reality, you're a caring person. So everybody you see whose life could be improved by this, you will be determined to get it to them. And you'll have more mental capacity to plan. You'll find your communication skills will improve even further, because you'll be able to put yourself in the shoes of someone else whilst you're trying to communicate with them, and you'll be getting the message across even more powerfully. I've never known anybody become anything other than more passionate and more driven with even more mental resources to fulfil what they'd love to achieve in their dreams.
And this is your life's purpose now, isn't it?
I can't, absolutely.
You might be the exception. I can't guarantee it.
No.
But I've never, we get, and that's why I like seeing folk like you. We constantly get mums coming back to us whose children have gone through it and saying, whatever I can do, tell me. I want to get this to loads more people. I don't want others to suffer like we've suffered in our family. And you're going to be unstoppable. You're going to be a pain in the butt.
I have always been a pain in the butt. You can ask anyone that knows me.
It's getting worse. No, you'll be more structured. At the moment, you jump from thing to thing. You're all going roughly in the same direction. In the future, you'll find yourself with more of a clear structure. You'll be able to plan ahead and say, I'm going to do this and then do that, and then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do that. And so you'll be more ordered, you'll be more efficient, more effective, and at least as passionate.
That's what I was trying to talk about earlier. You said I jump from thing to thing, and that's absolutely true. But I see that, and I own that as part of my creativity.
Yeah.
And I see other people...
Well, that's my criticism.
No, I know that, but it's just helping me explain. So I see my clients and my students do exactly the same things with their work, and then they're seeing their randomness, then they weave it into whatever they're doing, and they create something incredible. And I see myself doing the same thing, and I want to retain that. That's what I'm trying to say.
The difference will be, it's like, have you got a fairly small kitchen at the minute?
It's not, I'd say medium. It's not small like in a terraced house.
So okay, you imagine, just humour where you just listen to this analogy. You imagine having a small kitchen, and you're cooking a meal for 8 people, and you've got a huge amount of stuff out there, and it's really hard work, and where did I put that? And suddenly you've got a bigger kitchen. And you've got space to have the starters over here and the main course there, and you've got the desserts over there and the wine over there. You've suddenly got space to put everything. You've still got all of the ideas, it's just that when you put them down, you know where they are. They're not being hidden or pushed away by something else you're having to put on top of them. So it's working memory. It's the space in your mind to have everything you need. When you're operating with a very tiny amount of working memory, often when you have something new come up, it has to push something else out of the way, and you've lost it. Then you have to go and look for it. What was that again? Where did I put it? And all of those things go away when you have greatly increased working memory.
So I suppose an analogy for that might be this little notepad that I'm writing.
I thought that wasn't an analogy.
Yeah, but another analogy to help me understand it even more is this notepad where, I've got all my ideas in a quite small space, and I have to keep turning the pages to find them. My new brain will be more like a mind map that's on a computer, where things can be ordered in places that you can move around.
Yeah.
Same data, just easier to find and play around.
You'll lose less, you'll have it more structured, so it's more ordered, so you can share it more easily.
Yeah.
You don't spend so much time going back over things, losing things.
You've got the little share now button rather than having to find where you've put it and rewrite it out again. Yeah. Okay, interesting. Thank you so much. I'll just read out what I've written here. I imagine removing the traumatic symptoms of being educated in a system that was traumatic, that was traumatizing. For example, being forced to read out loud.
That's criminal.
Yeah, which, as we discussed earlier, still happens today.
Criminal.
I can't read my own
I
writing.
can't believe that's still happening. I thought that had stopped years ago.
No. There's something called... Oh, I know what I was saying. Okay, so I still have got that trauma from being asked to read out loud,
through life.
And I've heard recently that this thing, and I can relate to it, that people who have gone through trauma, that trauma can actually somehow give them a perspective that allows them to create great things. There's a term for it. Do you know what it is?
Okay.
I've heard it recently.
Let me talk about trauma.
Yeah.
If you have trauma very early on in your life, let's start with during pregnancy or at birth, in the early months, early years of your life. If you have the cord round your neck as a baby, if your mum has an accident, perhaps her parent dies or something when she's pregnant with you, or perhaps mum has postnatal depression and is taken away from you just after you're born for a few days. If anything happens to you where that young infant brain can't predict the outcome, it sets the tone for the rest of your life. So it kind of adjusts the thermostat that says the world is probably an unpredictable place, it's probably unsafe, and so it issues an awful lot more cortisol a lot more frequently than it should. So it kind of sets the expectation. It makes you a glass half empty person as opposed to a glass half full. So that sets the tone for how you respond to other things. Those early traumas, when the brain is forced to try and deal with something that it has no prediction for. So intuitively our brain has got all sorts of things to do. We know what to expect when birth happens, when we're born. But if the cord's around our neck, that's not programmed in. Mm-hmm. If suddenly the mum's opened up and there's forceps around my head, I'm not programmed for that. So anything that is a shock to the nervous system can do three things. First, it can create triggers. Triggers that become PTSD.
Right.
Secondly, it can stunt the development of the cerebellum. So different parts of the cerebellum can become stunted, which results in our eye tracking not being finished off, or our auditory processing, or our physical gross motor coordination. The third thing it can do is if this young little brain is being forced to solve problems it shouldn't have to solve, you're having to look outside the box to find out, where's mum gone? Why is mum gone? This is all in the unconscious, of course, not the conscious mind. It's not developed. But in the unconscious mind, where's my mum gone? You know, that I felt safe with her, the smell and the feeling and the breast milk and so on. That was all familiar. Suddenly, all of that familiarity is gone. I don't know what's happening. I'm scared. That little brain is looking outside the box. Mm-hmm. So trauma can create genius. It can create the attitude that looks outside the box from an early age. The attitude that is, there's a huge risk going on, but you know what, I've survived, so you become a risk taker. You think outside the box. You make connections that other people don't make.
Yes.
So those children that have no trauma, everything happens to plan. Mum and dad are wonderful nurturers, no surprises during pregnancy or at birth and the early months of their life. Everything is completely normal, really happy child, I've been a perfect mum. The child actually doesn't think outside the box because it never needed to at a very early age. That young brain never had to be creative, never had to take a risk. So you look at the symptoms of ADHD which crop up and go right through life. Risk-taking, creativity, thinking outside the box, making things happen for yourself, not relying on other people, just I'm freaking well doing this. That whole attitude often comes, not always, because sometimes if you have trauma at a very early age, if there's a parent or a grandparent or maybe an older sister or brother even sometimes, or an auntie sometimes, if there's somebody that you can totally rely on, you end up with all of the creativity and you're not a victim. But some people who go through life, you're not a victim, but some people who go through life as a victim, they had that trauma and for a crucial period of time, there was nobody there that they could totally depend and rely on. And it could be a grandparent. So if in the unconscious mind they know there's somebody that's totally safe and predictable. So even a mum, let's say mum's got a drug problem, sometimes she's normal and sometimes she's totally irrational. That changeability, lack of predictability creates trauma. But if there's somebody around that you can totally rely on, I'm generalising a bit, of course.
Yeah.
You don't become a victim. But if there's nobody around you can rely on, you tend to become a victim. And that goes right through your life until you change it. With PTSD with EMDR or something.
Yeah.
Did that make sense?
Yeah, it did.
I was generalising there, but I was giving you, because it's obviously more complex than that simple scenarios I was giving you.
Yeah.
But those are general principles.
So in a nutshell, you can see that it's true that people who do have trauma can then go on to develop skills that they may not have already had.
Yes. Everybody I've ever met, when you analyse it with ADHD, had trauma in early childhood.
Right. And I'm really...
So there's three things.
Yeah.
Triggers that create PTSD, puts you into hypervigilance, creates panic attacks, creates phobias, is one thing, the triggers that do that. Second thing is stunts the development of the cerebellum, so the probability is there'll be some key skills don't fully complete.
Mm-hmm.
And the third is the probable development of signs of genius, creativity, thinking outside the box, which then goes on in later life to become autism or ADHD or blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Have I shocked you?
I have to reflect on things. I'm going to listen to this again.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
And why isn't this taught at teacher training college?
Exactly.
They get half a day, typically, on special needs, that if you ask any teacher of a normal class, not a special needs class, a normal class, what proportion of your time do you have to spend with children that are struggling?
Mm.
Oh, my one-to-one time, it's 80% is with children that have got some special needs.
Mm.
Okay, 80% of your one-to-one time, and you've been given a total of half a day in training? Something seriously wrong there. In other words, our whole education system is geared to focus on the middle 70%, the top 15% and the bottom 15%, who are either very bright or very struggling, or sometimes they swap over. We're ignoring them.
I'm a trained teacher. There was nothing about this on my teacher training course at all. My tutor asked me to teach the class what I was learning about my own dyslexia.
Yeah, well, I'm writing a teacher training course now.
Wow.
When I get time.
But you'll do it.
Yeah.
I've got to do it.
Yeah.
I've got to do it. I stalled it because I suddenly realised that the world is not going to think appropriately about neurodiversity whilst we've still got 99% of people thinking the way they do about terms like ADHD and dyslexia. You know, I totally love it, Lisa, that you think differently and you're proud of it and so on, but I'm afraid you're less than 1% of the population.
Yeah, I have to say, I rang one of my aunties up and said, "Oh, hi, I'm ADHD." And she says, what did she say?
Poor thing?
No. She said, "Well, don't brag about it." And she's kind of shocked that I was saying it in such a proud way.
So that's why I stalled writing this teacher training thing, because I realised I need to change the whole dynamic of it. And my professor friend, he's developing a neurodivergence assessment that is linked to the strengths.
Ah, okay.
So we're going to come out with diagnoses of vast. If that is a diagnosis, it's an assessment. Isn't it?
Yeah.
The only thing is, I do believe we're going to get a younger generation who are all going to have... I think a lot more people are going to have neurodivergent. Yeah.
We're all on a spectrum somewhere.
I've always said that.
Yeah.
Exactly. It depends what the stress is in your life, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If it, you know. But the problem is we're going to have these private clinics that are doing it. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's why I feel this should be, what we're talking about now, should be in the education system.
Yeah.
At the moment, we've got educators running the whole education system, which is fine. And so you've got brilliant teaching happening. The quality of teaching we've got in the Western world is fantastic.
Yeah.
But nobody is looking at development. So we've got psychologists looking at behaviours and so on. We've got psychiatrists hanging around waiting to diagnose and give medication.
Yeah.
We've got teachers doing a brilliant job with teaching. Nobody is looking at, is this child able to learn?
Join up the dots.
Is their auditory processing working so they can take in and retain information? Is their eye tracking good so they can read and retain information? Because if we don't sort that out, it's like having a fire hose filling a bucket, but there's holes in the bucket.
Yeah.
And nobody's got the responsibility for finding the holes and repairing them. Now, the study we've just done up in that local authority in Merseyside shows that in one term you can identify and repair the holes in that bucket. In other words, you make the whole process of education infinitely more efficient for the rest of their school life. You can do that in 10 minutes a day for one term.
Amazing.
So why wouldn't you give teachers the tools to repair the holes in the bucket? Is this what you wanted, Lisa?
Yes, I think I'm about it. Just let me read this last thing and then I'll definitely finish up. Just going to read it out because I can't think and stress at the same time. I'm ADHD, dyslexic and dyscalculia. It is most definitely challenging for me to do things other people or neurotypical people do easily and automatically. Can you explain what neurodivergent people typically experience before doing the Zing program? Is there any merit in keeping... Oh no, forget that bit. Yeah, that was it.
What do neurotypical people experience?
I don't understand. I wake up in the night and have to write my ideas down, so
sure.
I think I'll just cut that one.
Are you saying neurotypical people, can they do the programme and can it still make a difference for them?
The answer
Maybe.
is yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
The answer is yes. Wherever we are on the spectrum, it doesn't matter. Our brains are capable of almost infinite more synapses. So if we create the right environment where we've got neuroplasticity and you've got the appropriate stimulations, the brain is going to look for and find and develop new connections. The more connections, the more intelligence, the more mental capacity, the greater the mental strength, the greater the mental resilience. And that's what we all want.